Hi everyone, welcome to Empower Individuals with Autism for Life's Transition and Employment. And having autism, this was one of my greatest challenges that I had to experience was gainful employment and also moving out of my parents' house. I was 37 years old, believe it or not, before I moved out of my parents' house. And now I've been married over a decade, 10 years. I have been gainfully employed at Havenwick Hospital for over 14 years. I have 3 traditionally published books with a 4th traditional published book coming out soon. And I've actually written a book called Autism, Growth, and Transitioning to Adulthood, which will be my 4th book. My 3rd book, Views from the Spectrum, A Window into Faith in Life in Your Neurodivergent Child, is a finalist for the Endies Award for 2022. I have a famous prairie dog who's been all the way from Madagascar to Israel, and my mom used Prairie Pup to teach me social skills. And I also have a honey badger that's my mascot that's been all over the world also. And leaving home in a sense involves a kind of second birth in which we give birth to ourselves. And that's Robert and Nellie Bella, an American sociologist and author, who said that. I experienced extreme difficulty transitioning from adolescent to adulthood. The hardest part was leaving my parents' home. I can only compare this transition to a nightmare-long COVID-19 pandemic. Imagine if COVID-19 continued for 20 years. You are forced to transition to a new normacy of social distancing and wearing a mask 24/7. You work for a gym which is now permanently closed down, leaving you unemployed and broke. Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, and Mark, CEO of Facebook, enjoy regularly attending professional sports events with their families and friends. But the government warns you to stay home, stay safe, making you feel out of the loop. Wearing a mask creates sensory issues with facial itching and a rash on your forehead. Since 90% of communication is body language and 10% words, you miss nonverbal social clues due to everyone wearing masks, making you feel socially awkward. Barbershops and salons are closed permanently. Your new look is a Captain Caveman and son with unkempt hair and poor hygiene. Social distancing of 6 feet combined with the prohibition of shaking hands, high fives, and hugs cause your body to cease to produce enough oxytocin, the cuddle hormone, causing you to feel depressed and disconnected from society. Congratulations, neurotypical. You've now transitioned to the new normacy for COVID-19. And that's really how hard it is for us on the autism spectrum to transition in adulthood. We lack social skills a lot of time. We lack experience to get the job of our dreams. My greatest struggle with autism was not my speech delay, sensory processing issues, which I call my honey badger moments when I have meltdowns, repetitive behaviors, learning difficulties, or even social interaction, though these were a real challenge for me, but employment. You see, only 3% of people with autism are gainfully employed. I did not experience gainful employment until age 32, even though I had 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's degree. I'm currently gainfully employed now for 14 years in the mental health field at Havenwick Hospital and 20 years as a professor of theology at Destiny School of Ministry. This past year, I received a 25% increase in my rate at the hospital. I also speak at over 70 events a year on autism, and I founded Spectrum Inclusion, and I have 3 traditionally published books. And all these things, great things in my life, didn't happen until my late 30s. The mission of Spectrum Inclusion that I founded is to empower young adults with autism and Asperger's for employment and independence so they won't struggle as much as I had struggled for many years. The best description I've heard of the challenges of having autism and being employed was from a coworker with Asperger's. When I worked at Crossroads for Youth, a coworker I'll call Mr. Ellison, that's not his name, who had a master's degree in social work and was diagnosed as a teenager with Asperger's, told me this: people like me with Asperger's are the last to be hired and the first to be fired. I just lack the social skills to read people and the social graces to say things that don't offend. I have been fired from my share of jobs the past few years by saying the wrong thing to the wrong person at the wrong time. The only job I'm able to maintain is a taxi driver because clients are forced to listen to my crazy stories and special interests because I'm in the driver's seat. Mr. Ellison lasted only a few months at Crossroads because of his inability to maintain control over a small group of juvenile offenders. Ryan, a 14-year-old, kicked a soccer ball and hit Mr. Ellison square in the head. About 30 seconds later, Mr. Ellison responded, was I just hit by a soccer ball or something? As his group roared in laughter. The teens received rewards of pop and candy based on receiving a certain number of points in their behavioral programs. Mr. Ellison would open up the refrigerator office and candy stash containing the kids' reward and say, free prizes for everyone today. No point checking on my clock, as he ate a Kit Kat. When confronted by a coworker, he replied, rookie mistake. The last I heard, Mr. Ellison was driving an Uber for a living. So if you're stuck in an Uber with a crazy guy telling crazy stories, it just might be Mr. Ellison. Most high school seniors look forward to graduating with expectations of attending college and having a meaningful career. Many young adults with autism, when graduating, they fear the future and feel extreme anxiety with transitioning into adulthood, especially moving out of their parents' home. And moving out of my parents' home was one of my biggest fears. I was used to my mom doing my laundry. I was used to my dad helping me when I had problems. I was used to a good meal every night made by my mom. Transition can include completing school, gaining employment, participating in secondary education, contributing to a household, participating in community, and experience satisfactory personal and social relationships. And all of these things are very hard for us on this spectrum. Skills an individual with autism will need to develop for a successful transition are self-management, self-determination, which is really just motivation, home living skills, employment, and community involvement. And community involvement means that you have connections. So if you have an emergency, you have people you're connected with who can help you out. And I call that a support team. In my book, Autism, Growth, Transitioning Adulthood, I talk about we need to have a plan and a support team to help us in the areas where we need help. And the support team needs experts in different areas that we're going to be working in. Only 58% of high school students with autism had a transition plan by age 14, as required by federal law. Temple Grandin, who I presented with in Metro Parenthood twice, says this: about 50,000 people with autism turn 18 every year in the United States alone. That's a little too late to be thinking about adulthood. I tell parents that by the time their kids are 11 or 12 on the spectrum, the parents should be thinking about the kids are going to do when they grow up. Nobody needs to make a final decision at that point, but the parents should start considering the possibilities so that they have time to help prepare their child for adulthood and having a career. For an individual with autism or Asperger's, 3 keys to independence are learning to handle transition, grow through life's challenges, and developing social skills for employment and independence. These qualities lead to greater independence and self-efficiency. And self-efficiency is a belief that when I begin a goal, I can accomplish it. And many people with autism don't have that self-confidence and self-esteem to believe that they can accomplish their goals. My parents empowered me for academics and employment by teaching me life skills and helped me develop a healthy self-image. My mom advocated for me to receive accommodation in education for my learning disabilities by my receiving speech therapy, tutoring, and extended time on exams. In my senior year of high school, in 1995, I had the first major Americans with Disabilities case for autism in the state of Michigan. Sanderson versus the MHSAA, Michigan High School Athletic Association. My senior year of high school, I was 3 months past the age limit to compete in high school sports due to being held back in kindergarten from autism. And I was one of the fastest runners in Michigan for the 800-meter relay. And my relay team at Rochester Adams was one of the fastest in the United States for high schoolers for the 3200. And my mom took my case all the way to Cincinnati courts right before the Supreme Court. I won, I got to compete, and I got full ride for track and cross country. So my whole life, I had a mom who advocated for me. And my dad was also a great advocate. My dad, with his Protestant work ethic, encouraged me to be employed from an early age, to learn skills to survive in the workplace. His motto was 2 Thessalonians 3:10. If a man shall not work, he shall not eat. And I like to eat. It being on the spectrum, I have my special foods that I love, like pizza or tacos or burritos. So I wasn't going to go hungry. When I was 12 years old, I was cutting our acre lawn with a heavy push lawnmower for $10 a week that my dad gave me. I had my first job outside the home at age 14 as a busboy at Bill Knapp's. The restaurant was famous for giving you a chocolate cake on your birthday and nicknames God's Waiting Room due to its ancient clientele. And trust me, having sensory issues, I could smell those old people's diapers while I was bussing the tables. It was horrible. Having a job from an early age helped me learn life skills such as budgeting and saving money, dealing with angry customers, and making friends with coworkers. And Temple Grandin said one of the best things you can do for a young adult with autism is have them get jobs, whether it's mowing the lawn, whether it's going out walking pets in the neighborhood, because it gets them out of the house and gets them into society where there's sensory issues they have to deal with, where there's people they have to deal with, and they can learn those life skills. My parents never allowed my disability to hold me back in life or to be used as an excuse or a crutch. I was reminded of the importance of self-efficiency and the ability to adjust to life's transition by a patient I'll call Jeff. I changed his name and some of the details to protect his identity. In his early 40s, Jeff was admitted to the hospital because his elderly parents in their 80s were unable to care for him, and his siblings advised them to place Jeff in a group home. For the next 2 months while Jeff was in the hospital, 3 times a day his mom would bring him good food from McDonald's, Tim Hortons, or a local pub. A fellow patient who was only 18 years old noticed the care Jeff's mom gave him and all the good food and said, "Man, Jeff, you have it made." Jeff replied, "No, you have it made because you're only 18, so you have another 25 to 30 years you can live with your parents. My time is almost up." Finally, Jeff's parents gave in 2 days before Christmas and brought him home for the holidays. And last I heard, he's still living with mom and dad. They weren't able to transition him out of the parents' house into a group home. In interviewing hundreds of young adults with autism, I have discovered that the greatest hindrance to growth and transition is a hopeless complex and fear of the future. Jeff feared the future because he couldn't always live in his parents' nice home. American psychologist Dr. Martin Seligman discovered the hopeless complex while researching learned hopelessness in 1967 at the University of Pennsylvania. Learned hopelessness is a behavior that occurs when an individual experiences failure enough times that they believe they are incapable of success, causing them to stop trying. Dr. Martin and his partner, Dr. Mayer, were conducting electrical shock experiments on dogs, a highly controversial method viewed by today's standards with people who love to hug trees, people who love pets like I do. First group of dogs received a painful shock on the right side of the lab, learning quickly to move to the left side to avoid the shock again. Second group received a shock on the left side, so they learned to move to the right. However, the third group was shocked on both sides, so they remained in their spot, intelligent enough to realize that no matter where they moved, they would feel the shock. They learned hopelessness. And Dylan Volk, author of Bad Choices Make Good Stories, describes autism hopeless complex perfectly from his own life. My life is such a minefield of failures. No matter how hard I try, and I try really hard, I can't keep a job, I can't keep a girl, I can't even keep track of my belongings, for God's sake. Even with my perpetual optimism, everything in life tends to go wrong. More wrong than I ever thought it could. I feel like my optimistic nature is being slowly and painfully eroded by my increasing soul life experiences. And there's a hopeless complex, soul crushing. Makes us feel like giving up. Proverbs 13:12 says, hope deferred makes the heart sick. People with the hopeless complex, they feel sick to the heart. Some of the causes for hopelessness include bullying, difficulty with communication, struggles in academics, distorted perspective of all or nothing thinking, sensory issues, failure in relationships, employment, and social interaction. And there's also fruits to hopeless complex that you don't want to eat. They're like an apple with a worm. Fruit of hopeless complex include despair, lack of motivation, fear to try new things, depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. And psychologist Dr. Tony Atwood, who's a top expert in the world on Asperger's, states 80% of people with autism struggle with depression and anxiety. So this is huge, getting depression and anxiety under control. Every milestone, major event in my life took me longer than my peers and brothers to accomplish. I graduated from high school at 20. Kids wanted me to wait one more year so I could be a designated buyer, not driver, at Adams High. I was 35 years old before I had a long-term relationship, 36 when I moved out of my parents' home, 37 when I got married, 41 when I became a father, 42 when my first book was published, 43 for my second book, Thought, Choice, Action, and it sounds like a name of a movie. I like that title. And I was 45 when my third book, Views from the Spectrum, was published. These delays and achievements can be very depressing. Danny Bowman, an animated film producer, and she's also in the Netflix series Love on the Spectrum, she's one of the people represented, says this: English is my second language. Autism, that's my first language. Autism affects self-efficiency by development not following a normal linear progress. I like how Judith Newman, author of the New York Times best-selling book To Serenko with Love, writes, children with autism don't develop skills in the kind of steady progress neurotypical children. There's more of a herky-jerky quality to mental and emotional growth, meaning that they may not be able to do something for a very long time, then one day they can just do it. I call this the jack-in-the-box development effect. You keep trying new things, dun, 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 with your child. Nothing seems to be working, then suddenly, pop, goes a breakthrough in development. Your young adult with autism is employed. So for years they may be underemployed, and all of a sudden the right job at the right moment at the right place opens up and they receive gainful employment. Or for years they may not be able to say more than a couple words, mommy, daddy, and all of a sudden they're talking. Most people take for granted social skills and communication, like proper eye contact, pronouncing words, or filtering comments. It took me years to perfect these social etiquette. In 2005, I found myself unemployed and unable to find stable employment for 3 years. I was previously employed full-time at a large church in Oakland Township near where I worked, and part-time as a youth pastor at a church in Highland, Michigan. Due to the downfall in the Michigan economy and recession, I was let go from both churches in the same week, no less. It was a horrible week. My employment during this time felt like a t-shirt I got from Five Below. The t-shirt shows a toothbrush. And he's saying this, I hate my job. And he's saying it to toilet paper with eyes, and he says, oh, please. I felt like that toilet paper. One of my friends said it best. My dad told me, you need to get a job where you never get fired for sexual harassment. You'll never get fired for an inappropriate comment. So I outsmarted my dad. I got the perfect job. I got a job at a funeral home. All the clients are dead. And autism for us on the spectrum can be very, very disappointing and very hard. For the next 3 years, I experienced unsteady employment, working 4 months at Corky's skateboard shop for $5.25 an hour, 5 months at a moving company, and the remainder at Crossroads for Youth as a youth specialist, as I mentioned earlier. During this dark season of my life, I did a self-examination into what was holding me back in life and realized it was my social skills. My journal entry for 4/13/06, and what I find interesting is that I had this self-discovery during Autism Awareness Month, and midway through it at that too. So my journal entry for April 13th, 06 states, work on your people skills and pray for God to develop people skills in you. I also listed in my journal 7 methods to improve my people skills. And for the next 3 years, I focused on refining these communication skills. And by age 32, I had them mastered. And that enabled me to be ready to start really dating for the next 5 years and find my wife, Kristen. So the 7 ways to improve people skills, and this is from my journal entry. Number 1, seek first to understand, then to be understood. See, when a thought came in my mind, I was like Donald Trump with Twitter. I just spit it out. I spewed out for the world. Number 2, no monotone. Ron, you sound like a robot. The first girl I ever asked out on a date, she said these words right before I asked her out. Why do you have why is your voice total monotone? There's no inflection. You sound like a robot. I thought I'd be cute. I said I'm more to meets the eyes like a transformer. But I still didn't get a date with that girl. Timing of words. I had horrible timing. 2 people would be talking. I'd go and right between them and spew something out that I shouldn't say. Timing of words. Proverbs 15:23 says, a person finds joy in giving an amp reply, and how good is a timely word. And I've learned how to delight people. When I meet people, I'll say something about their outfit or something about their background, and I'm able to delight people and make good connections. In fact, now I speak at over 70 events a year, 25 churches, and I'm able to relate to people I'm speaking with and spend time with the audience afterwards. Some churches as big as 5,000 members will have me come and speak, and then afterwards I'll be speaking to a lot of different people. Number 4, have eye contact when talking to people. For years I was looking every which way but towards the person I was speaking with. And I've mastered that now. I have good eye contact. Number 5, pronounce TH and L words by using the proper tongue movements. So when I say lion, I make sure my tongue goes up and down. When I say mother or brother, I go through the Mackinac Bridge and it comes out. So I make my tongue go through the bridge of my mouth. And I've learned to do that and master it. And number 6, pray and seek the Lord. And one of the things that happens when you pray, you become more aware of your environment. You're expecting good things to happen. You're expecting blessing. And when you're looking for that, you less anxiety of bad things happen because you know the Lord is going to bring good things into your life. Number 7, develop a strategy for people skills by imitating friends who have those skills. And there's a young man, Steve Jones, and I can never thank him enough. He had the best people skills I've ever seen. And he took me under his wing. And through him, I learned those people skills. And I learned to be able to adapt to my environment. Dr. Karen Clark, whose son has autism, and me and her do a lot of presentations at churches on safety, states this: I don't want to turn an autistic person into a non-autistic person. I want to help an autistic person who struggles become an autistic person who does not struggle. So you're not trying to change your child. You're not trying to change your client. And if you're an adult on the spectrum, you're not trying to lose autism. You're trying to become the best version of yourself you can be. A hope complex empowered me for relationships, academics, transition, and gainful employment. And self-efficiency is a person's belief in their ability to execute the actions necessary to achieve desired outcomes. And I had to learn those things. Deborah, whose son has Asperger's, wrote, I am convinced that the greatest gift we can give our differently wired kids is a knowledge of who they are, how their brains work, and what they need to do to create the life they want. Because when we guide our children along the path of self-discovery, they can feel good about themselves, develop self-advocacy skills, and ultimately grow up to be self-realized adults. Remember Maslow's pyramid? What's the top? Self-actualization. And that's where I find myself today, is I have confidence to have a prairie dog that I carry around all the way from age 7 to 16. I can feel confident to show him off speaking in front of thousands of people. I'll be speaking in a rock concert, and I'll have that prairie dog up there in front of over 5,000 people at the rock concert when I share on autism, or having a honey badger that I take with me everywhere. And I could be meeting famous celebrities like Kurt Armstrong, or when I met Screech from Saved by the Bell. And I feel confident having a honey badger there. Some people wouldn't feel that confident, but I have that self-efficiency. Michael G. Guru, who works full-time as a data processor and is on the spectrum, said this: the most important thing my parents did to help me with my social skills was to treat me like I was any other child who had the potential to overcome challenges. They helped me set small goals and gave me feedback on areas where I need to improve. One example is that they suggested I ask people questions about their lives. This helped me be a part of a two-way conversation dialogue. So treating your child like any other child needing to transition to adulthood will help give them that self-confidence. Aaron McKinney, a young adult with autism who works for basketball operations for the NBA Memphis Grizzlies, when I interviewed her, shared this: working gave me an increased level of independence. I have a unique job doing video, breakdown, and statistical analysis for basketball teams, which comes with odd hours, varying schedules, travel, and lots of sensory overload. And notice, she loves basketball. So you know what? She's able to overcome sensory overload. She's able to come not having the routine, but a unique schedule, because that special interest is greater than our disabilities in areas. And our special interest can help us with transition. She goes on to say this. She goes on to state this: through my job, I have proven to myself I am capable of more than what many people said I would be. On a daily basis, I work on my own to complete assignments, tasks to the best of my ability, going beyond what is asked of me. The doom and gloom is gone. Depression is lifted and has been replaced by happiness and positivity. I'm very thankful for this change. I am happy with my job and with my newfound independent and confident. What took? Self-efficiency. What did it take? Transition happened as her special interest met her adulthood, and she was able to work in that area. All right, developing a transition plan creates hope for the future. And or as adolescents with autism prepare for life after school, transition plan is needed to dictate goals, course of study, service, and support. So knowing what they need is key for transition. Effective plans require active involvement and participation from parents or guardian and the individual with autism, along with teachers, counselors, and educational professionals. Let me state that again. The adult or the young adult with autism, they need to be involved in their transition. You can't say we're going to have you working this job and they never want to work that job, or living in this location and they never want to live in that location. You need to let them share their dreams, share their hopes. Otherwise, they're going to develop. Remember that hopeless complex, like those dogs. No matter where I move, I'm going to get shocked. When creating a transitional goal, ask questions like, what skills does my child need to develop? What areas is she lacking in social skills or executive function? Or how can he learn basic life skills to care for himself? Goals for students with autism must be developed specifically for the individual and should be functional in nature, helping them gain independence. And that's what I mean by that. With a focus on skills needed in current and future environments, and also with view of employment in mind. It is recommended goals for adolescents address hygiene, communication, and social skills in community, home, and leisure content. You want them to have stuff that they find joy in, whether it's playing video games, whether it's watching movies. Those motivate. Make sure the skills you teach are relevant and you aim for the greatest efficiency of skills acquisition for independence. In transitioning adulthood, some life skills may be lacking, like hygiene. Make sure to address these in the transitional goals. Temple Grandin shares, when I started living on my own, I was a slob. My new boss at the feedlot construction company made it plain to me that my grooming had to improve for me to keep my job. I greatly resented it. And when he presented me with a container of deodorant and told me that my pits stink, it is perfectly fine to be a little eccentric, but dirty or ragged is not acceptable. I love Temple Grandin. She tells it as it is. So hygiene is important. No one's going to want to work with someone who smells like a skunk, right? Difficulty with the executive function of the brain can cause some individuals with autism to be able to do complicated math problems, but ain't able to budget a checkbook or figure out change received at the local grocery store. Michaela, a young adult with autism who works in corporate compliance, shares on ways to use the executive function in creating a budget. Here's what she says. It's no secret. I'm terrible with numbers. I cannot visualize them in my mind. This can make bills difficult. In order to stay on budget, I created a calendar. I write down my bills and the full amounts on each due date so I can see it. With this visual, not only am I able to remember, but also I can now stick to budgets. Once my bills are written down, I take one of my bank statements. On the statement, I see how much food is costing me, as well as other living expenses. I then see how much is left over. This is a great visual because I see exactly where my money is going and what my spending habits are. Then I create exact numbers for me to stick to. Example, eating out, $100 per month. Groceries, $300 per month. Now gas would probably be $500 a month. That she didn't have that in there though. And keep a running tab in my phone. Once I reach the number, I know that I'm unable to spend in the category until the next month or paycheck. Visual by far are most helpful for me in keeping track of my money. And we know that 90% of people with autism are visual learners. They learn best visually. So helping your young adult with autism be able to have calendars when their events are due, a budget that's visual, they can see marked out on a paper will help them out. We're going to look at 4 ways my parents prepared me to have skills to transition in adulthood. And they were family chores. They had me doing work around the house to learn basic living skills. Early employment, as I mentioned earlier, my dad had me working at Bill Knapp's. I worked at Big Boys. I worked at a Little Caesars Pizza Hut, or a Little Caesars Pizza Place and a Pizza Hut during my early adolescent years. Mentors, I had great mentors who helped me out and teaching me social skills. Autism caused me to hate change and experience extreme difficulty in transitioning from one activity to another. Setting small goals to reach bigger ones helped me as a child to learn to adapt to transition. Also, learning life skills at home and in the community helped prepare me to transition into the workplace. Antoinette Lesko, a nurse anesthesiologist who I've presented with before, shares this. The job market is highly competitive for everyone, even neurotypicals. For those on the autism spectrum, it's far more difficult. But it's up to parents to get your kids out there doing various jobs at an early age. Start them home doing what? Chores. Having autism and working a career type job is like going to a foreign country, not speaking their language and trying to survive. To this day, all these years later, I still feel like a foreigner in a strange land. Yet I have built enough experience and learned the language enough to have a successful career. I know without a doubt in my mind that I would never have made it as an anesthesiologist if I hadn't had my previous jobs. And I can say that true. With me, I would have never gone away to Tulsa, Oklahoma, 930 miles from Michigan, unless my parents would have me doing chores, working different jobs, and knowing how to interrelate with people and have those connections. Family chores develop skills for transitioning in adulthood because they require self-management, negotiation, and problem solving. Negotiation, hey, how much money are you going to give me for cutting the lawn, or how much money are you going to give me for vacuuming the carpet? Parenting expert Kathleen Reynolds Lewis shares the importance of family chores. Adults think that they're helping children by doing these tasks themselves or outsourcing them. In fact, not giving them simple household chores deprives kids of the chance to build skills and be useful around the house. Just think about how disoriented and demoralizing it is for adults to find themselves jobless. Is it any surprise that kids without any real responsibility are increasingly anxious and depressed? Moreover, parents miss the opportunity to connect with kids while teaching them cleaning, laundry, cooking, lawn work, and other necessary tasks. Children and young adults with autism, they love routine, so make the chores a routine. And family chores can be a daily routine. Have your child do his chores at the same time each day, after dinner or before homework. This will teach them to be organized, boasting self-confidence, as well as raising his sense of responsibility. Maureen, the mother of 2 young adults with autism, recommends the following for family chores: watering plants, folding laundry, emptying the dishwasher, vacuuming, making the bed, simple food prep, and feeding a pet. And all these create what? Responsibility, right? Management. Also develop a first-in language to reward for chores. First dishes, then TV. This way your child knows the order of things and what to expect when. Your child can't expect the reward of TV or video games until the dishes part of his routine has been completed. This allows you to give your child the reward without negative thinking, like, if the dishes are not done, then you cannot watch or play. Spinning it the other way sets your child into a more productive and positive mindset. We'll get the chores done, then we'll watch that movie you've been wanting. A mentor can be a young adult with autism, mentors can help a young adult with autism to transition from college and employment. And Oral Roberts, the founder of Oral Roberts University, where I went to college, said this: success without a successor is failure. And I love that quote. Let me say it again. Success without a successor is failure. For us to have a legacy, we got to raise up the next generation. A mentor can be a professor, roommate, friend, co-worker, or fellow college student who is a teacher and a role model. So you want a mentor to be patient, you want him to be a role model, and you want him to be able to teach your kid those skills. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And my mentor in college was TV evangelist Dr. Jack Van Impe. Temple Grandin said, talent attracts mentors. And Dr. Jack Van Impe had a very unique gift. We both had over 15,000 scriptures memorized. In the summer of my senior year at ORU in 1999, I served as the first intern for Dr. Jack Van Impe's ministry. Through this internship, I learned the skills required for operating an international ministry, and I was able to develop my ministry skills working with his ministry. And when Dr. Jack Van Impe died January 18th, 2 years ago, the New York Times had a 3-page article on Dr. Jack Van Impe. He was one of the most influential preachers of the 20th century. And I was able to work under him because I also had 15,000 Bible verses memorized. A mentor can also be a famous author or person. I recommend young adults with autism read books on autism and Asperger's written by authors who are on the spectrum and become an expert themselves. Temple Grandin books are a great resource to learn about autism and Asperger's. Some books I recommend of hers are Thinking in Pictures, Different, Not Less, and Unwritten Rules of Social Relationships. These will help young adults with autism learn the skills that they need. I learned social skills by community activities and sports. Temple Grandin shares on social skills. And my work as an equipment designer for the meat industry, I've seen many undiagnosed, highly successful people with Asperger's syndrome. The more structured upbringing of the 50s, 60s, and 70s taught them social rules and have helped them to fit in. Unfortunately, there are many younger, talented individuals with Asperger's who've lost jobs because their upbringing was less structured. They were rude and would not obey the boss. Providing structure and rules will be beneficial to all individuals in the autism spectrum, ranging from brilliant individuals with Asperger's to an individual who remains nonverbal. So structure in your house is going to help them be able to have structure out of the house and be polite, not rude. 3 essential skills for gainful employment are self-advocacy, workplace experience, and networking connections. So first we're going to look at self-advocacy. Last year the hospital was so understaffed that the CEO and DON began mandatory overtime for the nursing staff. Being mandated by a supervisor can cause severe anxiety for an employee with autism. In response to new policy, I self-advocated by having an Oakland University professor of autism write a letter requesting accommodations for my autism under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So I would not be mandated. All my buddies were mandated Friday and Saturday night, while I got to go home on time. Sometimes a disability, hey, has its benefits. I also used advocacy skills to have my dog Rudy become an emotional support pet so we could keep him in our apartment. Barb Cook, an autism and neurodiversity employment consult, wrote, young autistic adults need to be heard and supported in finding their voice so they can advocate for themselves, setting them up for adulthood in a future that they can independently decide for themselves. Employers need to work with autistic people in creating working environments that support them, considering their sensory needs and value their unique way of viewing the world, and facilitate them in expressing new ideas that can effectively benefit all in the workplace. So people with autism bring unique gifts, and if they can find how to connect, they're going to be able to do great things in the workplace. Number 2, work experience. I can guess what you're thinking. How can my child with autism ever gain gainful experience if no company will hire him? Carrie Magro, a young adult with autism and an author and friend, states this: getting experience as a volunteer or on an intern may open the door to an entry-level employment with an organization or companies. I volunteered at Oakland Christian Church for a year before they hired me full-time, and I ended up working there for 3 years. A recent job study found that 42% of people responsible for hiring workers consider volunteer work equal to full-time work experience. 1 out of every 5 managers responsible for hiring in the U.S. hired a candidate based on their volunteer experience. Encouraging young adults to try different activities to discover what they enjoy, and to learn skills for the workplace. So volunteer can turn into a career. Think about it that way. Remember that. Volunteer can turn into a career. And with me, I have a career speaking at churches, and I volunteered at churches. For years, I'd go speak at churches, and now that door's opened up for part of my career. Angela Mahoney, a special education teacher and life coach, states, when working on a plan for the future, it's important to try a variety of activities or opportunities. This allows you to reflect and process if it was enjoyable or challenging, ultimately leading you to a narrow field for employment preference. I recommend creating a personal portfolio to record each vocational activity. In addition to this running record, it is self-reflective piece. After completing a task and knowing how many such tasks were completed, young adults then discuss how they felt about the task at hand, directly through their written portfolio entry. Additionally, this personal portfolio is the first step in a resume building process. And I built up a resume, and I built that up by my speaking engagements, by my conferences, by my writing books. And next, don't limit experience only a college degree. While earning a college degree is one path, we must remember there are many other paths an individual can take. Technology and trade schools are also a valuable option, and depending on the individual, the better option. Degrees are still thought of as a lifelong stamp of professional competency. They tend to create a false sense of security, perpetuating the illusion that work and the knowledge it requires is static. Think about it. In a job, most of everything you do for your job, you didn't learn in college. You learned it on the job, right? My coworker Steve, a nurse with Tourette, states, there's a self-life to education, but not experience. The World Economic Forum predicts 65% of children entering primary school will end up in a job that don't yet exist because the technology required for those careers does not yet exist. This is good news for individuals with autism, since many possess a gift for attention to detail and an intense focus, two attributes required in the technology field. With an increased rate of autism, there's also a great increase in technology, electronic gadgets, and scientific discoveries. So we see that autism, we have a place with technology, and we need to learn to take advantage of that. Number 3, networking connections. Symbiosis is an interaction between two different organisms living in close physical association, causing each to flourish. An example of this is a sea anemone and clownfish relationship. The sea anemone provides the clownfish with protection from predators and nutrients. In return for a safe, protective home, the clownfish benefits the anemone in several important ways. These include cleaning the anemone, providing nutrients in the form of waste, and scaring away predatory fish such as the butterfly fish. My favorite example of this is a warthog and mongoose. Mongoose eats the tits and bugs for nutrition off the warthog. Like the relationship of symbolism in nature, employers can benefit from the unique talents individuals with autism provide in the workplace, and this can help us transition to gain more freedom, right? If we're employed, we can get an apartment with the money, we can go on vacations with the money, and provide our needs. Mark Fleming demonstrates this unique skill set autism supplies for the workplace. While working as a behavioral analysis ABA tech, Mark noticed many children and young adults with autism were not physically active and they were overweight. Mark shares, seeing the muscular weakness in the kids I worked with in ABA and the older adults I coached at Special Olympics made me realize that there is a physical activity gap that was not being fulfilled. So I started an in-home training business that flourished to full schedule in its first year, and thus made me realize to expand and grow and help more individuals. I would need to open my own gym. I found it equally fit in Tampa, and this business helped individuals with autism become physically fit, healthy, and learn social skills. And I had the pleasure when I was in Tampa to meet Mark Fleming. He's an amazing young adult, but he being on the autism spectrum, he had this relationship with people with autism and knew that they needed gyms. Working full-time in the mental health field with acute aggressive psychotic patients can be very stressful. My core worker, Toby Evans, says this: I try not to analyze things too much. I come to work expecting the worst, but hoping the best. You never know what you're going to get working in a mental health field. The networking I gained through my nonprofit Spectrum Inclusion will enable me to transition smoothly into my next career. I already have over 30,000 emails and over 400 churches on my contact list. I also have contacts with almost every autism and ABA center in Michigan, and I'd say about 60% of every ABA center I've spoken at in Michigan and done a workshop. It takes most people 3 to 6 months when unemployed to get hired. With my contact list, I could get hired within a few days, since I have personal contact with the decision makers in companies and churches. These decision makers have seen my presentations or read my 3 books, and they know the leadership skills and gifts I can bring to the workplace. And I'm going to just leave with these closing thoughts. Transition to adulthood requires setting goals, teaching skills for independence and employment, but it also requires hard work and dedication. Hard work for the person with young adult with autism transitioning, and it requires dedication on the parents to help them learn those skills, help them to adapt and be able to move out of the home. Also, a network of support services to make transition from parents' home to independent living or a group home more efficient. The earlier you begin planning, the better. Research studies show transition planning needs to begin when students are between 10 and 13 years old. With more serious planning as a child enters middle school. The key to my success is self-efficiency, the confidence to try new things and not be afraid to fail. And I've learned over the years that the more things I try, the better I get at them. I've also learned that the more opportunities I take, the more confidence I have. So in college, I went on mission trips every year. I went to Madagascar, Bulgaria, Cameroon. And working in a team setting and being thousands of miles away from home, I gained self-confidence, but I also learned social skills because when I saw people of other cultures that they do things differently, I realized what my own culture was like. And I learned to adjust to foods I wouldn't eat before because now I was trying new things. And I just want to leave you with this thought. Any fool can see an apple on a tree, but it takes dedication, vision to see that orchard and that apple seed. Never limit that young adult who's transitioning adulthood, never limit their potential, but see the great things in them, see the talents, and refine those talents and help them gain self-efficiency. The belief that when they begin a goal, they're able to accomplish it, whether it's moving out of the parents' home, whether it's getting a driver's license, whether it's graduating from college or a trade school. The more you encourage, the more you praise, the more self-confidence they're going to have. Thanks so much for having me here. And my books on autism are Views from the Spectrum, A Window into Faith and Life of Your Neurodivergent Child, and A Parent's Guide to Autism, Practical Advice, Biblical Wisdom, published by Charisma House. And I want to encourage you to build your children up and encourage them. The more you teach your child how to advocate, the better advocate they're going to be. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your time at the conference.